He introduced me as his friend. Not his fiancée. Not the woman he had proposed to 8 months earlier in the restaurant where we had our first date, down on one knee with the specific ring I had described once in passing and he had remembered. Not the woman whose name was on the save the date sitting in a box in our hallway waiting to be sent. Not the woman who had spent the previous 3 weekends visiting venues with his mother while he worked late. His friend. He was standing beside him at the edge of the room holding a glass of wine I had not yet touched when he said it. His colleague Piers had approached and Declan had turned to me with a smile so natural it stopped my breath and said, "This is my friend Nadia." He looked at Piers. Piers looked at me. He shook my hand. Then a woman appeared at Declan's other side. Young. Composed. Wearing the specific kind of dress that requires planning. Declan's hand moved to the small of her back in the automatic way of someone touching something familiar. He introduced her as Celeste. His colleague. She smiled at Piers. She did not look at me. He stood in that room for 11 more minutes. He finished my wine. He said I had a headache and needed some air. Declan said of course and kissed my cheek. He walked out of the building. He did not go back in. My name is Nadia. He was 32 years old and 8 months from a wedding that was never going to happen. And what came next was something Declan did not see coming because he had fundamentally misunderstood the kind of woman he had been calling his friend. I need to tell you who Declan was before I tell you what he did. Because the story only makes sense if you understand that he was not a simple villain. Simple villains are easy to leave. Complex ones are the ones that cost you something. Declan Marsh was 35. Senior account director at Vance & Pryor, one of the most respected advertising agencies in the city. He was good at his job in the visible, celebrated way, the kind of professional who gave presentations that rooms remembered, who brought in clients through the force of his personality, who had a reputation that preceded him at industry events. It was also the most attentive man I had ever been with. In the beginning. That qualifier matters. In the beginning he remembered everything. He asked questions and then asked follow-up questions weeks later that proved he had been listening. He showed up. He made plans. He introduced me to his colleagues and his family and his oldest friends with a pride that felt like being held. We met at an industry conference 3 years before the party. I ran the brand strategy division at a mid-sized consultancy called Meridian Creative. It was speaking on a panel. We had dinner that evening and talked until the restaurant closed. By the time he proposed I had spent 2 years building a life around a man I believed I knew completely. The party was the first evidence that I had been wrong. It was not the last. He did not go home after the party. He walked for a long time through the city in the specific way I always walked when something needed processing, without direction, letting the movement do the work my mind could not yet do sitting still. He thought about Celeste. The dress. His hand on her back. The automatic quality of that gesture, not placed with care or intention but settled there the way hands settle on things they have touched many times. He thought about the previous 3 months. The late nights. The working weekends. The particular quality his phone had developed of always being face down on surfaces. The way certain conversations had started feeling like performances, slightly too smooth, slightly too prepared, the texture of someone who has rehearsed rather than simply thought. He had noticed all of it. He had explained all of it away. He had told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting old anxieties distort what was in front of me, that Declan was under pressure and I needed to trust what I knew rather than what I feared. Standing on a pavement at 10:45 on a Friday night I understood that what I had been dismissing as paranoia was actually perception. He had seen it. He had known it. He had chosen not to know it because the alternative required me to dismantle a future I had been building for 2 years. He pulled out my phone. He called my closest friend, Bix. She answered on the second ring. He said, "I need to tell you something." She said, "I am listening." Bix had known for 6 weeks. She told me that on the phone standing outside a closed coffee shop at 11 at night and I want to be honest about what that cost me to hear. Not because she had not told me. I understood immediately and without resentment why she had not. There is no version of delivering that information that does not risk the friendship and the recipient's stability simultaneously. Bix had been waiting for the moment I was ready to see it and had been protecting me from an earlier, less prepared version of this conversation. What it cost me was the understanding that I had been the last to know. She told me what she knew carefully and completely. A colleague of hers who worked at a different firm had seen Declan and Celeste at a restaurant 6 weeks ago, not a work dinner. A specific restaurant I recognized, the one in the neighborhood near our flat, the one we went to for occasions. They had been there on a Tuesday when Declan had told me he was at a client dinner across town. She said she was sorry. She said it the way people say it when they mean it fully and know it is not enough. He said, I know. It is not your fault. Then I said, I need to ask you something. She said, anything. He said, I need you to find out everything you can before Monday morning. She did not ask why Monday. She simply said she would. He went home. Declan was not there yet. He sat in the kitchen with the lights low and I thought about the shape of what I was going to do. I want to be precise about my state of mind in that kitchen because I think it matters for everything that follows. He was not hysterical. He was not shaking. He was not cycling through the stages of shock in the dramatic way people sometimes imagine betrayal arrives. He was clear. Clarity is what comes when the thing you have been half knowing becomes fully known. The uncertainty is what creates the anxiety, the not knowing, the explaining away, the exhausting work of maintaining an alternative interpretation against the evidence. When the uncertainty resolves, the anxiety goes with it. He knew. Completely. Without doubt. And knowing changed the quality of everything. He made a list in my head the way I always made lists when a project required structure. He was a brand strategist by profession. I understood positioning, narrative, the precise management of information and timing. He understood that what happened next was not about emotion. It was about execution. He went to bed before Declan came home. He lay in the dark and listened to him come in. He checked on me. He said he had been worried when I left. He said the headache had passed and I was tired. He kissed my forehead. He said good night. Saturday I was a version of myself so precisely calibrated that I have thought about it many times since as evidence of what people are capable of when the stakes are high enough. He was warm. Present. Engaged in exactly the right measure. He made breakfast. He asked about the party. He listened to Declan describe it in the edited version he had prepared, the version where he had noticed I seemed off and had been concerned, the version where the evening had been unremarkable except for my headache. He asked about Celeste in the middle of him talking about something else entirely. Casually. The way you ask about a name you are filing away rather than one you are pursuing. He said she was a new account manager. Talented. The team liked her. He said she seemed nice. He agreed. He watched him agree. He watched his face as he said it, the slight adjustment, the extra half second before the words arrived. The texture of someone managing information while performing normalcy. He said nothing else about her. Saturday afternoon Beck sent me a message. 3 words. I have everything. He said, send it Monday morning. 7 am. She said, are you sure about the timing? He said, completely. He spent Saturday evening helping Declan review a presentation he had a Monday morning client meeting. He was thorough and honest and the presentation was better for my involvement. He thanked me. He said of course. Sunday I called his mother. Fran was a woman I had genuinely loved from the moment I met her. Warm, direct, with a specific dry humor that made every conversation feel like a gift. She had welcomed me into the family with a completeness that had moved me. She had come to 3 venue viewings. She had asked my opinion on flowers and food with the specific care of someone who understood that a wedding belongs to the couple and not the mothers. He called her on Sunday afternoon. She answered warmly. She asked how the party had been. He said it had been interesting. She said, Nadia. Are you alright? He said, I will be. I need to ask you something. He asked her whether she knew who Celeste was. A pause. Then friend said, how did you find out? Those 5 words told me everything I had not yet confirmed. He said, I saw them together on Friday night. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she had found out 3 weeks ago. She said she had confronted Declan and he had told her it was over and she had believed him because she had needed to. She said, I am so sorry. He should have told you. He said, you were trying to protect your son. She said, that is not an excuse. He said, no. But I understand it. Then I told her what I was going to do on Monday. She did not try to stop me. Beck sent me everything at 7 on Monday morning. He was already at my desk at Meridian Creative. He had arrived at 6:45, which was not unusual for me. I had always been an early arrival, something Declan had teased me about and that had turned out to be one of the things that mattered most this particular Monday. The file Beck sent was thorough. Her contact had gone further than I had asked. There were photographs, not intimate ones, simply documented evidence of the kind that comes from someone who knows how to look. A restaurant. A hotel lobby. A Sunday morning on a street neither of them had professional reason to be on together. There was also a detail I had not anticipated. Celeste was not simply a new account manager at Vance & Pryor. She was the daughter of a man named Gordon Hale. Gordon Hale, who had been the founding partner of one of the firm's oldest and most significant client relationships. A client relationship worth a number I will not state but that represented a substantial portion of the agency's annual revenue. A relationship that had been managed personally by Declan for 3 years and that the senior leadership of Vance & Pryor considered one of their most strategically important accounts. He sat with that information for a long moment. Then I understood why Declan had introduced me as his friend. It was not simply about hiding an affair. It was about protecting an account. I want to tell you about the Monday morning meeting because I think the details matter. Vance & Pryor's offices were in a building 12 minutes from Meridian Creative. He had been there twice, once for a company event Declan had invited me to, once to pick him up when his car was being serviced. He knew the reception layout. He knew the floor his team worked on. He knew the time his Monday morning client meetings typically began because I had heard about them every Sunday evening for 3 years. The client meeting was at 10. He arrived at Vance & Pryor at 9:40. I was wearing the specific kind of outfit that requires no explanation, sharp, considered, the visual language of someone who belongs in professional spaces. He had chosen it carefully on Sunday evening while Declan was in the shower. He gave my name at reception. He said I was there to see the senior partners. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. He said I did not but that what I needed to share with them was time-sensitive and directly relevant to a client relationship they would want to protect. She made a call. 3 minutes later I was in a meeting room on the 14th floor with 2 senior partners, a woman named Harriet Vance and a man named Christopher Pryor, who had the particular expressions of people who have been pulled from their morning unexpectedly and are deciding whether to be annoyed or attentive. He placed Bex's file on the table between us. He said, my name is Nadia. On Friday evening at your company party your senior account director introduced me as his friend. My name was on his wedding invitations. He thought you should know what that introduction cost, and why. He told them everything in under 20 minutes. Not emotionally. Strategically. I am a brand strategist and I understood that the way information is delivered determines how it is received, and I needed these 2 people to receive what I was telling them clearly and without the distortion that comes when personal pain is too visible in the presentation. He told them about the engagement. About the party. About Celeste and her father and the account relationship and what I believe Declan had been protecting when he introduced me as his friend. He told them I was not there for revenge. He said that clearly and I meant it. He was there because I had spent 8 months planning a wedding with a man who had introduced me as his friend in a room full of his colleagues and I believed that the people responsible for the professional environment that had enabled and perhaps incentivized that behavior had a right to understand what had been happening inside it. Harriet Vance listened without expression. Christopher Pryor took notes. When I finished, Harriet said, "How long has the relationship with Miss Hale been ongoing to your knowledge?" He said, "At minimum 3 months. Possibly longer." She said, "And the Gordon Hale account, you believe the relationship was a factor in how it was managed?" He said, "I believe my fiancé introduced me as his friend at a company party to protect a professional relationship. I will leave the implications of that to your judgment." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Thank you for coming in." He left Vance and Pryor at 10:17. Declan's client meeting had begun at 10. It would be in that room, presenting the work I had helped him refine on Saturday evening, unaware that 2 floors above him his senior partners were reading a file that contained documented evidence of a relationship that compromised one of their most important client accounts. He walked to a coffee shop 2 streets away. He ordered a flat white. He sat at a table by the window. He called Bex. She answered immediately. He said, "It is done." She said, "How do you feel?" He thought about it honestly. He ran through my internal state the way I always did after a significant presentation, checking for anything unresolved, anything I had not anticipated, anything that required attention. He found one thing. Grief. Not for Declan as he had turned out to be. For Declan as I had believed him to be. For the restaurant where he had proposed and the venues I had visited with his mother and the save the dates in the box in our hallway. For the 2 years of genuine love that had been real even if the man receiving it had not been. He told Bex I needed an hour. She said she would be at my office at noon. He sat at the table by the window and I let myself feel the full weight of it for exactly an hour. Then I paid for my coffee and went back to work. Declan called at 2:17. He was in a meeting. He let it go to voicemail. He called again at 2:49. He was still in the meeting. Voicemail. At 3:15 my assistant knocked on the glass of my office door. She said there was someone in reception asking for me. She said he said it was urgent. He said I would be 5 minutes. He finished the point I was making to my team. He asked them to continue without me. Then I went to reception. Declan was standing near the door in the specific state of a man who has received news he was not prepared for and has not yet decided how to manage it. His composure, the composure that had always been one of the most consistent things about him, the professional steadiness that made rooms trust him, was not entirely present. He looked at me. He looked at him. He said, "You went to the partners." He said, "Yes." He said, "Nadia. You did not have to do that. We could have talked." He said, "You introduced me as your friend." He opened his mouth. He closed it. He said, "I gave you every opportunity to talk. You spent 3 months choosing not to. You chose what happened at that party. Everything that followed was a consequence of that choice." He said, "They are reviewing the Hale account. Do you understand what that means for me?" He said, "I understand exactly what it means." He looked at me for a long moment with an expression I had never seen on his face before. He said, "I would like you to leave my building now." What happened at Vance and Pryor in the 48 hours after my meeting with the partners was something I learned about through industry channels rather than direct involvement. The Gordon Hale account review was not simply a review of Declan's relationship with Celeste. It opened a broader examination of how the account had been managed, the decisions made, the priorities set, the way certain other clients had been deprioritized in the same period that the Hale relationship had been developing. What the review found was not criminality. It was something more common and in some ways more damaging, a pattern of professional judgment compromised by personal interest. Decisions that had benefited the Hale account at the expense of others. Relationships that had been managed with the specific attention of someone who had an investment in the outcome that went beyond the professional. Gordon Hale himself requested a meeting with the senior partners on Wednesday morning. He was a man who had built his business on a specific set of values: integrity, transparency, the insistence that the people he worked with maintained clear boundaries between professional and personal, And what he had been presented with did not align with those values. He withdrew the account on Wednesday afternoon. Declan did not come to work on Thursday. He did not come to work on Friday either. By the following Monday his position at Fiancé had been formally restructured. The senior account director role that had been his professional identity for 4 years was no longer his. The save the dates were still in the box in the hallway. He found them on Tuesday evening when I came home from work. He had been staying at Bex's since Monday morning, a decision I had made before I walked into Fiancé, as part of the same preparation that had included the outfit and the file and the 9:40 arrival time. He had come back to collect the rest of my things. The flat was Declan's, his name on the lease, his deposit, a detail I had noted and been privately grateful for when I made my plans. Leaving did not require a conversation with a letting agent. It simply required a bag and a key left on the kitchen counter. He found the save the dates in the hallway and I stood with the box for a moment. He thought about the evening we had addressed them together, a Sunday in February, the two of us at the kitchen table with lists of names and a bottle of wine, laughing about the ones whose addresses we could not find. It had been one of the evenings I had held in my mind as evidence of what we were. Ordinary and warm and entirely ours. He put the box in the recycling. He collected my things. He left the key on the kitchen counter. He did not leave a note. He had already said everything I needed to say in a meeting room on the 14th floor of his office building. Fran called me on Wednesday evening. She was the first person from Declan's life to reach out and I want to be honest about what receiving that call cost me. Fran was not a casualty of what Declan had done, she was a woman who had been deceived by her son and had made an impossible choice in how to respond to that deception. He did not carry anger toward her. She said, I heard what happened at the firm. He said, yes. She said, I want you to know that I understand what you did and why. He would not have had the clarity to do it that way. He said, I had more time to prepare than it looked like. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Then she said she was sorry. Not for the first time and not in the managed way people apologize when they are managing a situation. In the way that means it has been sitting in them and they needed it to be said again. He said, I know. I believe you. She asked if I was all right. He said I was getting there. She said, you are one of the finest people I have met. I want you to know I know that. And I am sorry my son did not know it well enough. He thanked her. We said goodbye. He sat with that for a long time. Declan sent a letter 2 weeks after the party. Handwritten. Delivered to Bex's address which told me he had been in contact with someone who knew where I was, a detail I noted and did not pursue. He held it for a day before opening it. It was 4 pages. The first 2 were the relationship from his perspective, the meeting at the conference, the first year, the proposal. Specific memories written with the specific quality of someone who had genuinely held them. He had expected the letter to feel like manipulation. It did not feel like manipulation. It felt like grief. The 3rd page was an explanation. It said the relationship with Celeste had begun at a work event 8 months earlier, 2 weeks before the proposal. He said he had not known how to stop it and had not known how to tell me and had made choices he could not justify. It said the introduction at the party had been the worst moment of his life because it had required him to make a choice in real time between 2 things he could not reconcile and he had chosen the one he was most afraid of losing professionally. He wrote, I chose the account over you. In that moment. And I have not stopped understanding what that means since. The 4th page was an apology without conditions. I read all 4 pages twice. Then I folded them and put them in my bag. Not in a drawer. In my bag. Because I was not ready to put them somewhere permanent yet and I was not ready to discard them either. I want to tell you what the weeks after the party gave me beyond the obvious things. Beyond the clarity and the freedom and the professional competence I had demonstrated on a Monday morning with a file and 20 minutes in a meeting room. Beyond the forward movement of a woman who had made a decision and executed it and was living inside the result. What it gave me was a revised understanding of my own judgment. He had seen it. At the party, in the 3 months before, in the specific texture of conversations that had felt slightly performed. He had seen all of it and I had explained it away and I had maintained the explanation against mounting evidence because I loved him and because the alternative was expensive. But I had also moved the moment the evidence became undeniable. He had not waited for certainty to become permission. I had not asked for a confession or a conversation or the kind of closure that requires the other person's participation. He had assessed what I knew, made a plan, and moved with a speed and precision that I think surprised everyone including me. That was not new capability. That had always been there. It had simply been waiting for a moment that required it. What the party gave me was the moment. And what I found on the other side of it was a version of myself I had not fully met before. Someone who did not need the story to end neatly. Who did not need the other person to understand what they had done. Who could walk into a meeting room on a Monday morning and place a file on a table and say my name was on his wedding invitations and let the rest follow. The industry heard about it. Not from me. He had not spoken to anyone in the professional community about what had happened. But industries are small and Vance and Pryor's restructuring of one of their most senior account directors following the withdrawal of a significant client account was not something that passed without comment. He received 3 messages from people I respected professionally over the 2 weeks following. Each one was careful and indirect in the way professional communications are when they are navigating something that requires acknowledgement without specificity. One of them, a creative director named Sorrel who I had known for 4 years and who had a reputation for reading situations with exceptional accuracy, sent a message that simply said, "Heard you had an interesting few weeks. For what it is worth, your instincts have always been correct in every context I have observed them. I hope you know that." He replied, "Thank you. I am beginning to." Another was a client I had worked with for 2 years who said he had heard I might be considering new opportunities and wanted to talk when I was ready. He had not been considering new opportunities. But I was now. The third was from a headhunter I had spoken to once 18 months ago who said there was a brand director role at a firm I respected that had just become available and that my name had come up in the conversation. He said I was interested. The interview was on a Thursday morning 3 weeks after the party. The firm was called Vela, smaller than Meridian Creative but more focused, with a client list I had admired for 2 years and a creative reputation that had been building steadily for 5. The brand director role was a step up from my current position in every meaningful way, more autonomy, a larger team, the kind of strategic scope I had been ready for longer than I had been willing to admit. He prepared thoroughly. Not out of anxiety, out of the same precise attention to execution that had carried me through the previous 3 weeks. The interview panel was 3 people. He was in the room for 90 minutes. The questions were specific and demanding and I answered each one with the directness of someone who has recently had occasion to understand their own capability at close range. At the end of the 90 minutes the panel thanked me and said they would be in touch within the week. He said I appreciated their time. He shook 3 hands. He left. In the lift on the way down I thought about the version of me who had sat across from Declan at the kitchen table on Saturday evening helping him refine a presentation for a Monday meeting at a firm I had walked into 48 hours later and placed a file on a table. The version of me who had prepared both things with equal precision. The version of me who had known, in some quiet part of herself, exactly what she was capable of. Declan called me on a Friday evening 6 weeks after the party. He had changed my number in the 2nd week but he had been given the new one by someone, I did not pursue who. He answered because I had reached a place where answering no longer cost me anything. He asked how I was. He said I was well. He asked if we could meet. He said, for what purpose? He said, I need to say some things in person. The letter was not enough. He said, the letter was complete, Declan. You said what needed to be said. He said, I am not asking you to come back. You know that is not possible. I just need you to hear me say it. He thought about it. He thought about the restaurant where he had proposed and the venues with his mother and friend's voice on the phone saying I am sorry my son did not know it well enough. He said, I heard you in the letter. He believed it. That is going to have to be enough. It was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you happy?" He thought about the Vela interview. About backs and the flat whites and the evenings that had been entirely mine. About the version of myself I had met on a Monday morning in a meeting room on the 14th floor. He said, "I am getting there faster than I expected." He said, "I am glad." He said goodbye. He did not feel sad after I hung up. He felt the particular lightness of something that has been properly completed. Bella called on a Tuesday morning. He was at my desk at Meridian Creative when my phone rang with their number. He answered. The HR director said she was calling with good news. She said the panel had made a decision. She said my name. She said the role was mine if I wanted it. He said, "I want it." She said, "Wonderful. We are very pleased." He put down the phone. He sat at my desk for a moment. He thought about a Friday evening 8 months earlier in a restaurant where Declan had gone down on one knee and I had said yes with complete certainty and called my mother from the table. He thought about the 2 years before that and the 3 months after and the party and the file and the Monday morning. He thought about what Harriet Vance had said at the end of our meeting. Just 4 words, delivered in the measured tone of a senior partner assessing information and drawing a conclusion. She had said, "You are very composed." He had said, "I had time to prepare." She had said, "More than that." He had not known what she meant then. He understood now. She had not been complimenting my preparation. She had been recognizing something that preparation does not explain, the specific quality of a person who has looked at the worst thing and not been diminished by it. He picked up my phone. He called Bex. He said, "I got the job." She made the same sound Tamsin had made. The sound that does not translate. It was exactly right. He gave notice at Meridian Creative on a Wednesday. My manager, a steady, perceptive woman named Claire who had always understood more than she said out loud, received the news with an expression that I read as the particular combination of disappointment and respect that comes when you lose someone you have always known was going to outgrow the space you had to offer. She said, "Where are you going?" He told her. She said, "Bella. That is exactly right for you." He said, "I think so too." She asked if there was anything she could do to make me reconsider. He said no and that the decision had nothing to do with dissatisfaction. She shook my hand and said she expected to see my name on significant work within 2 years. He thanked her. He went back to my desk. He thought about the Caldwell project. About the Monday morning. About the file and the meeting room and the specific quality of knowing your own capability at close range. I thought about Declan's presentation that I had helped refine on the Saturday before everything happened. About how good it had been. About the fact that I had made it better and he had known it and thanked me and gone to his Monday meeting carrying my thinking under his name for the last time. It had never understood what he had beside him. That was, in the end, the truest summary of everything. He moved into my own flat at the end of the month. Top floor. Sold fussing. A kitchen with enough counter space to cook properly and a bedroom window that looked out over rooftops toward a thin strip of river visible on clear days. He had found it myself. Negotiated the lease myself. Managed the finances without consulting anyone who had not been asked. Bakes helped me move on a Saturday. We ordered food that evening and sat on the floor because I did not yet have furniture and talked for 4 hours and it was one of the best evenings I could remember. That night I lay in the dark in my new bedroom and took stock. He had a new role starting in 3 weeks at a firm I respected. He had a flat that was entirely mine. He had Beck's and friend's phone number saved in my contacts and a letter in my bag from a man who had finally understood something too late and had said so honestly. He had the version of myself I had met on a Monday morning in a meeting room on the 14th floor, the one who had walked in with a file in 20 minutes and the specific composure of someone who had prepared for this and was ready. She was not new. She had been there for a long time. She had simply been waiting for the moment that required her. That moment had arrived in the form of a Friday evening and a hand on a back and 3 words from the man I was going to marry. "This is my friend Nadia." He had heard that sentence. He had walked out of the building. And I had spent the weekend building everything that followed. The industry piece ran 6 weeks after I started at Vela. A trade publication that covered the advertising and brand sector ran a profile on Vela's new brand director, a piece that had been requested by the firm's communications team as part of a broader visibility campaign. The journalist was a woman named Petra who asked good questions and listened carefully and wrote with the specific accuracy of someone who respects the difference between a story and a narrative. The piece described my background. My work at Meridian Creative. The Vela appointment. What I was building in the new role. It did not mention Declan. It did not mention the party or the meeting room or the file. It did not need to. It was simply a piece about a brand director who had arrived at a significant role with a clear point of view and the professional record to support it. But the industry read between the lines the way industries always do. He received 14 messages the day the piece ran. Some from people I knew well. Some from people I had met once at events and who had clearly been following the situation from a distance. I love them some version of the same thing, acknowledgement, respect, the particular recognition that comes from people who understand what a certain kind of Monday morning requires of a person. Declan saw the piece. He know because friend mentioned it in one of our occasional messages. She said he had read it twice. She said he had not said anything. He had simply put his phone down. He thought about that for a moment. Then I went back to work. People ask me sometimes what I would say to Declan if I could say one thing. He think about it and I always arrive at the same answer. He would say, you introduced me as your friend. Not with anger. Not with the weight of everything that followed. Used those 5 words, stated plainly, because they are the truest summary of what happened between us. You had 4 years of someone who showed up fully. Who helped you prepare presentations on Saturday evenings. Who visited venues with your mother. Who addressed save the dates at your kitchen table with a glass of wine on a Sunday in February and laughed about the addresses you could not find. Who loved you with the specific completeness of a person who had chosen you deliberately and without reservation. And in a room full of your colleagues, with her standing beside you, you introduced her as your friend. That sentence cost you everything. Not because I made it cost you everything, though I did walk into your office building on a Monday morning with a file. But because the sentence itself was evidence of a judgment so poor, a prioritization so wrong, that its consequences were always going to arrive. He simply accelerated the timeline. My name is Nadia. I am brand director at Vela. He addressed your save the dates and visited your venues and stood beside you in a room of your colleagues and you called me your friend. And on a Monday morning I introduced myself. You did not come back to work that week. And everything I needed turned out to be waiting for me on the other side of that Monday.